iguales como solepana. Ay, 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 Seigneur paradis. Merci mon Dieu, Ibania yeki kupesa. Ibania yeki belkisa. Ibania yeki kupesa. Ibania yeki belkisa. Kami kujori, unila mazete, azua sa kote, unila mekaribien kitushuka. Ay, 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 Seigneur paradis. Merci mon Dieu, Ibania yeki kupesa. Ibania yeki belkisa. Ibania yeki kupesa. Ibania yeki belkisa. Nous disons passer, yes les autres côtés, c'est le picado nous ça passe à replacer. Aïe aïe aïe, c'est un paradis. Merci mon Dieu, Ibania yeki kupesa. Ibania yeki belkisa. Ibania yeki kupesa. Ibania yeki belkisa. Dormez au dos, au banilage, dans les autres côtés, où il y a dans sa famille belle maison. Aïe aïe aïe, c'est un paradis. Merci mon Dieu, Ibania yeki kupesa. Ibania yeki belkisa. Ibania yeki kupesa. Ibania yeki belkisa. Merci mon Dieu, Ibania yeki kupesa. Ibania yeki belkisa. Ibania yeki kupesa. Ibania yeki belkisa. Merci mon Verge.
Hi, good evening.
Yes, my bro. Good evening. How you doing, man?
Let's say good evening to our subscribers
Okay.
to contending for Dominica. Good evening, folks, wherever you are. It is the 7th of February, 2021, and we are here with you on the social media platform contending for Dominica. And this evening, we're going to look at a very vital component of our life, and that is the economy. And our guest is a very distinguished gentleman, very colorful as far as his credentials are concerned. He's an economist by profession, a former political leader of the Dominica Freedom Party. It's a name that is well known in every household in Dominica, and he was known even before he stepped into the political arena. He has worked in various fields as an economist, I recall him as a teacher at the Dominica College. Yes, he taught me economics and good at it. Hence, one of the reasons why he has moved on and has journeyed in vast territories. His last professional stint was at the Caribbean Development Bank based in Barbados. And of course, he has a lot of fuel in his tank. He can go for many more decades working whichever institution ready to accept his skills and his talents. But out of love for Dominica, he decided to return home to make a contribution to the general well-being of Dominica. Of course, that's a pillar on which he stands as a politician. Yes, I still refer to him as a politician, an economist by profession, but like me, he has decided to enter the political arena so that he can have a direct influence on the policies in respect to the growth and development of Dominica. And we're just happy to have him here this evening. That is Kent Vital. We're happy to have him. Of course, he could always add more. I cannot do justice to his credentials, to his experience, to his value as an economist. But he's going to tell us where he has worked, why he's on this platform, why is it that he chose to return to Dominica, and he's going to answer some very important questions in respect to where we are. Because of course, there are a lot of speculations as to where the Dominica ought to have been further, whether where we are is the best for us, whether we could have been worse had it not been this current administration. Of course, sometimes you listen to our administration and you will swear that's the best Dominica could achieve currently as far as our economic situation is concerned. The economist here, Mr. Vital, is going to share his views. He's going to tell us where we are and where we could have been and what is the way forward. Good evening, Mr. Vital. Welcome to Contending for Dominica. I'm very happy to have you here and welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm very happy for your invitation indeed. And I was just reflecting on the name of your program, Contending for Dominica, and it is so appropriate, and that's exactly what many of us are doing. We are contending for this beautiful country. It's worth it. And as I always say, sometimes it's difficult to find a stranger fighting for you because they don't know you. There's no reason why they should be fighting for you. And sometimes it happens that there are good strangers that somehow have on their heart to help someone that they don't know from head to toe. but when you really need help, it's your own people that must help. It's your family first. Often we say family first. But think of Dominica as one big family, our fellow Dominicans. When we realize that we're in trouble, sometimes a stranger will come and take us out of the trouble. So we have to take ourselves out of the trouble. We have to help each other as a family. We have to contend for this nation. So I really love the name of your of your program, Contending for Dominica. I just started my own column, as you know, and on every Wednesday, every Tuesday to come out on the Sun newspaper and also on DNA. It's referred to as restoring the essence of the nation. So it's in the same vein.
Yes. So we're contending to restore.
Yes.
For order.
That's right.
And Kent, you have such a vital role to play because, of course, every aspect of our life is so heavily dependent on the economic well-being of the country.
Yes, indeed.
Really, your engineering is very important for Dominica, because your skills and your talents mixed with your experience is what we need to propel Dominica to the next level. And this is what you're going to talk to us about. Of course, you have worked with the Caribbean Development Bank, you have worked with several other institutions. So you're not only looking at Dominica from a theoretical point of view, but having that experience, you are very much aware as to where we were, where we are, and where we could have been had we used the resources in a more optimal or more efficient manner. We'll be joined by Claudia Sanford himself, also a trained economist, a lecturer at the Dominica State College. We may have different perspectives on different things. We are here to contend, and in contending, we have different opinions. We may discuss the same issue and look at it from different lenses, but at the end of it, we have a common objective, and that is to enlighten our listeners and help elevate the discussion in quest of making Dominica a better place. So Kent, of course, we want to recognize those who have come on. I'm sure you have one or two followers yourself, so you are free to tell them good evening. And we want to make the program interactive, so it would be nice if you pay attention to the thread, because people may ask you questions and you want to engage them.
Okay.
So of course, we invite our followers to be part of this. Yes, so Ken, yes,
Yeah,
just tell us a little bit. I mentioned that you worked in several areas. It would be nice if you can let us know where you worked.
Right. Well, the last place I worked, of course, was the Caribbean Development Bank. I worked there for more than 10 years, but in different states. But significantly more than 10 years I worked there. And just before that, with the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, where I worked for about 5 years. But between these two institutions, I could tell you, I covered a lot of countries. I was in connection with many officials, ministers of government, and officials from other organizations such as the IMF or the World Bank or Inter-American Development Bank. I interfaced with them through the Caribbean Development Bank or Eastern Caribbean Central Bank in discussing strategies and discussing projects and discussing loans and those kinds of things. So I have a wide exposure to the issues in the Caribbean. Of course, Dominica is one country I directly covered while I was at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. In fact, I remember when I took over the desk for Dominica at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. That was at the time when Dominica was going through quite a struggle, and the Prime Minister at the time was Pierre Charles, the great Pierre Charles. I said great Pierre Charles because he was a statesman, he was a gentleman, and he was a statesman. That was Pierre Charles, a man who really wanted to do the right thing for Dominica. And that was the time when I was on that desk, when I was able to contact the Ministry of Finance in Dominica at the time, who was I didn't know she was the economist. Rosman was, I'm not sure. No, she was not FS at that time, but she was the economist then. And contacted the folks at the Caribbean Development Bank, where I was not working at the time. But I contacted them, and the three institutions, the three groups together, really came down and started to pay attention to the challenges Dominica was having. In particular, there were significant fiscal challenges. There were issues of having sufficient funds to pay staff, civil servants, and so on. There were just the fiscal situation was in a mess. And of course, related to that, there were the growth challenges. So I remember being part of the team that pulled that together and practically designed a strategy to take Dominica out of that situation. Subsequently, the IMF came in and basically run with that strategy. I'm sure and subtraction, but basically what we had in mind was really what we used at the time. So Dominica was definitely one of the countries, but I've had exposure to many other countries, either through preparation of strategic documents for these countries as part of the Caribbean Central Bank or the Caribbean Development Bank, in terms of Jamaica, Antigua, St. Lucia, Belize. I've had direct so I fully understand the kinds of issues and challenges that we face as a Caribbean, and therefore it's not just as you write for me, but challenges. For instance, one of the great challenges I see right in the Caribbean is the whole challenge of governance. It's worse than the other than but governance is a major constraint and a major challenge that we as a country come up with stems from our system of governance. But when you have a system of governance that maybe should be tweaked or And you add to that corrupt governance, you have a red corrupt. That is not okay. What is the first thing that's in order? And I remember actually I was on another program when I talked about listing some others. I remember the Al Jazeera report when the guy said he has seen corruption in his lifetime. He has never seen corruption like that. He said normally in normal corruption, what you see these guys, you know, negotiate something, whatever, and they take 10% for themselves. That's corruption. But if they allowed it to be from 90%, he said in the case of it's the reverse. They take 90% for themselves and they allow the country 10%. So what I said there are different levels is worse than some of Dominica is one of the worst cases of corruption. And that's a major reason why we are not progressing as we should. Or we are not as we so indeed, that has been my experience and experience in Canada. So I'm happy to be able to in any way I can contribute to Dominican people. I have no doubt in my mind that we can do that. But I am also determined not to end this up, and it's part of the strategy we have to use to liberate our country. We're not standing there. We're going to do everything to lift our country. And in doing so, that will be
Kent, I do not want to rudely interrupt you, but it appears that we're having some difficulties with your audio.
Okay.
In and out.
Why?
I'm not too sure why either. And for those who are listening, please kindly let us know whether you can hear Kent properly. I have some difficulties hearing him myself. I'm not too sure whether you are. Just indicate to us, please, in the thread whether you have any difficulties. Of course, I said that we'll be joined by Claudius Sanford, himself being an economist attached to the Dominica State College. We expect him to come in to weigh on the matter before you this evening. Of course, Ken spoke to us about some of his experiences. And as I said, he's not only going to talk to us from a theoretical point of view, but he actually worked in the system and he can look at Dominica from an absolute point of view as far as its economic performance and from a relative point of view, meaning that he can compare Dominica with St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and Antigua. Because when we analyze Dominica's economic situation, we have to look at it relative to our neighbors, where we were. Kent will tell you that one time Dominica was at the apex of the economic hierarchy in the Eastern Caribbean, and from being number one to now being last. You know, Kent will tell us why is it that we continue to have the lowest minimum wage, the lowest foreign direct investments, you know, the poorest performance in agriculture, in tourism. Our private sector continues to struggle. Our productivity level is relatively low. Exports low. We're not involved in manufacturing. And now we're in the business of selling our citizenships. You know, I would like Ken to comment on that as well. But we're just looking at the economic welfare of Dominica from a general point of view. And Kent, of course, is at liberty to focus on any area of the economy that he desires, because our objective is to get you to understand where we are. And we're not marrying the conversation with any cloud of partisanship. We are basically speaking based on raw data, on reality. We're not going to call a blue house a red house. We're going to call it as it is. So Ken, having said that, you know, you were telling us about your experience. As an economist, where was Dominica relative to its neighbors, let's say 10, 20, 30 years ago?
10, 20, 30 years ago. Let's go about 20 years ago in the period where we had thriving ban, 20, 30 years ago where we had a thriving ban in the trade. Let's go there, and we were basically doing fairly well compared to St. Lucia, compared to Grenada, and St. Vincent. We were all the islands exporting bananas. That these were the high time of bananas, and Dominica saw significant progress during that time. Antigua around that time was always ahead of the rest of us, including St. Lucia and Vincent, Grenada, with tourism. Antigua. Although if you go back people will say to you, Dominica was once at a time when we were head of Antigua in tourism. So you would maybe have to go back 40, 50, 60 years. But there was a time when, as a matter of fact, I heard the story that one of the first hotels that went to Antigua was because Dominica had a kind of refused it, kind of. I don't remember the exact story, but these guys went to Antigua. But that's a while back. But talking 20 to 30 years when the banners were doing good. Dominica and St. Lucia, I explained to people, for instance, around that time, there was a time when Dominica and St. Lucia were both dependent on banners, and then we were about equal. But, we like to make a comparison with St. Lucia. We both speak Patois. We're cool. We're very similar in many ways. Those of us who go to school with St. Lucians, I mean, they are our good buddies and our friends and so on, So we are very close to St. Lucians. But we were basically around the same in terms of GDP per capita, in terms of the strength of the economy. It was dependent on bananas, and tourism had not yet taken off as much in St. Lucia as it is now in St. Lucia. So we were both doing fairly well. But what happened when the banana industry started to decline, or even before that, St. Lucia had introduced a number of programs aimed at improving their tourism industry. So Dominica at the same time was beginning to do that. Dominica was later in doing that, but we had started that. If you recall on the Meridian charts, how long ago are we going back now? But if you recall around that time when the economic citizenship was started in Dominica, that was part of the intention to have attracted investments in tourism. And I keep saying, if there was success in that regard, which started, the tourism picture in Dominica would have been totally different if there was success. But Dominica had also tried to move on to tourism, and that was the attempt then. St. Lucia had a little advance in doing that. But what happened was, because St. Lucia was successful in developing the tourism industry, what happened was we were both here, and St. Lucia did this, and we stayed here. So after 9/11, I remember when someone suggested that after the crisis, no, not the financial crisis of 2008, financial crisis, when remember we were both around here. St. Lucia did this, and we stayed here. So St. Lucia's economy fell. And let's say the came up and I was before, and people were trying to mislead us. Oh, we are very resilient, which is based on the truth. The thing is, Lucia did so much to that growth in tourism. When the crisis hit, the tourism suffered. Dominica had not grown its tourism industry. So when the crisis hit, nothing suffered. The fact that nothing suffered doesn't mean that you're resilient. It means you have nothing to lose. That is the ways in which people use statistics and they are created this. But that is what happened. These countries grew tourism with it. We need more lifting and some growth in tourism. We did it. And Vincent hasn't grown as much. Vincent about problems. The other countries have continued to grow and keep them about if you look at the figures themselves, what you would see is that for the last 20 years, Dominica grew about in real terms. Real meaning you take out the effect of education, and you look at the underlying growth in the real value of goods and services that we produce. Dominica grew about 1%, which is not spectacular. How someone who's you maybe underlying factors, even under that little growth, that's low growth. All the other countries have average so in the last 20 years,
right. So you're saying that our pace of economic development lag behind that of our neighbors?
Definitely, over the last 20 years, for sure.
Over the last 20 years. And why would that be, though? You're saying that, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, St. Vincent, Grenada, all these islands went ahead of us. What would be the cause? Is it because there has been maladministration? Is it because Dominica has something peculiar about it which prevents it from being able to advance as St. Lucia or Antigua? What is it?
Well, I would say that we have had bad governance. We have had very bad governance especially over the last 20 years. We did have some challenge 20 years, 25 years ago in terms of the fiscal situation. Indeed, the fiscal time and I remember around that time, as I said to you earlier, when I was part of those who looked at what was going on in the proposed solution, I was part of the group that did that then. Unfortunately, at that time, after that program was done, I had moved on to the Caribbean Development Bank. So I was no longer assigned specifically to Dominica. But I think following that, we just did not have kinds of proper leadership in the country. After PSM died, we had government by this young. And since that kind of government came on board, public sectors don't seem to have had any kinds of in really growing economy. They seem to have a lack of ideas. They don't seem to attract the right kind of people. Attract the right kind of people. What we want to attract are people who will help them in pursuing their own self-interest. Really think of the interest. Because if you really think of it, guys, that many people have recent examples of look at what Russia have done, what Russia created, and kids have done these have low-end development. They had that opportunity. Money is not showing up, and this received finance that use Dominican instead we use self-interest. So what we have had is managers who really are self-interest, that they are not concerned about Dominica's interest. They give people more and give a little as bribes, and they spread a lot.
Hey, Kent, we continue to have an issue with your audio. We're not too sure what is the problem. I'm not too sure if there's anything you can do to rectify it.
I have no idea what's the problem because I don't have any noise source up there.
Right. Yeah, we're having some difficulties here. But if there's anything you can do to cure that problem, please go ahead.
Okay, let me see.
To introduce Claudius Sanford.
Good
evening, Claudius. Yeah, Claudius Sanford is here with us, the former deputy leader of the United Workers' Party, lecturer at the Dominica State College, economist himself. We want to hear Claudius on the economic welfare of Dominica. Good evening, Claudius. Can you hear us?
Yeah, Josh, good evening. I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, very good. Good evening to contending for Dominica. Of course, you are one of the contenders. You have been contending for a long time now.
That is true.
We're happy to have you
whatever
here.
way and shape and form that I can.
Right.
I'm happy to be with you here tonight. When you invite me to join, I just came from the Cardinago territory myself over the weekend, so hence my little tardiness in joining. I apologize for that. But I've been involved in the farm from last year, and that has taken a lot of my time, and it has given me a lot of joy and satisfaction. And when I get some time on the weekend from college, I try to spend as much as the quality time I can with the farm as well as with the family. So again, I apologize for my tardiness, and I'm happy to be with you tonight. And I think the discussion is very timely, coming out of the year almost since we have been faced with the pandemic. It created an opportunity and a space for us here in Dominica to begin contemplating and thinking of our own economic well-being and how we can survive as a small developing country in the context of a global pandemic, which is in a really trying times. So I believe your topic tonight is very timely, and I'm happy to be in the company of a distinguished gentleman, Mr. Ken Vidal. Met him at UWI when I went to do my first degree here, and from that we have been really, we have kept in connection, and I know he's a man that I admire a lot and respect. And likewise yourself, Josh. It's always a pleasure to be in your company. So I'm happy to be there tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Claudius. And we're happy to have you here this evening as well. I'm sure our followers are happy to have you. Of course, tonight is Super Bowl. So some of the people who normally be here are consumed in American football. I hope their team, whoever they are supporting, will be victorious. No two teams can win the same game, So let's just hope that the people who are absent, the people who normally follow us, following the football, will enjoy themselves. Claudius, always a pleasure. You're a man with great wealth, lots of knowledge. You're a contender for Dominica as well as for the Kalinago territory. I respect you a lot. I admire your intellectual capital, and I know that you have the Kalinago people at heart. You have been working with them and for them. And that change you want to see where Kalinago people can become more independent may not be too far away from now. Of course, that's going to come with a change of administration, because we have seen clearly that the current administration is more making our Kalinago people dependent, economically dependent as opposed to independent. And that takes me to the question which I asked Kent earlier. Of course, it appears that Kent's connection may have some difficulties. Kent, I suspect that what is happening may not be your fault. It may just be a question of interruption in your signals. But Kent was dealing with the question as to where Dominica was 20, 30 years ago. Have we done worse than our neighbors? Why is it that we are here? And in Kent's summation, basically, he stated that one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, why Dominica is behind, lagging behind our neighbors economically is because our economic growth has been substantially smaller than our neighbors. So in places like St. Kitts, on average, you may have 3 to 4% economic growth over the past 20 years. In Dominica, you had less than 1%. So clearly, if one country is realizing 3%, 4% economic growth, and Dominica is enjoying just about 0.4, 0.5, 0.6 on average, then that explains why is it they are more advanced. Ken, tell me if I'm right. Claudius, tell me if I'm right. Of course, each of you will get a bite at the cherry. Why is it that Dominica is behind St. Kitts, behind St. Lucia, behind St. Vincent?
Right. Josh, if you allow me to just go ahead. I tend to take things maybe from a more academic standpoint, and as such, tonight you may find me in the realm of theories to begin with my own analysis and discussion. Principle one in economics, which we learn from fundamental from any moment we start this field of study of economics, says there that people face trade-offs, right? And it happens at all levels, from this individual to the institution to the entire economy as a whole. You face trade-off. What we have seen happen from the post 1995 2000 era is a trade-off between an economy moving in the direction of efficiency, coming out of the Eugenia Charles era, who we could place from the Freedom Party from an ideological standpoint, were more a center right on the spectrum of economic systems, and we saw that the United Workers' Party continued mostly along the same line, center right, pushing a lot of production and productivity in the agriculture sector, modifying and transforming the education sector, trying to fight poverty by introducing the whole idea of universal secondary education, and all these grand ideas, developing infrastructure like the road networks and making the telecommunication sector more competitive. All these were policy actions that kept Dominica on what we call the center-right spectrum in the divide of the free capital or the free market, the common market, and moving a little away from the middle, having more efficiency than, you know, the equity. What happened beyond the 2000 era with the current administration is that we saw a reverse of that. The Dominican Labour Party, after the passing of Rosie Douglas and Pierre Charles, took a very steep turn towards the left. And what we find now is that the whole idea of productivity, efficiency was traded off for a policy action towards more equity in the economy. And like anything else, once you trade one for the other, you'll have less of one and more of the other. So the whole productive sector of the economy is in Dominica, because of that's move by the Roosevelt Skerritt administration, has sacrificed productivity, has sacrificed creativity, innovation in the economy, and moved towards a distributive, what we call dependent kind of economic system that has not motivated and given the private sector in Dominica the kind of energy that it needs to keep, you know, to keep producing more, keep being innovative, keep doing research and development, and coming up with new ideas to have greater production and profitability in the tourism sector, in the agricultural sector, in the manufacturing sector, and even in the construction sector. And that in itself, over the last 20 years, if we look at it from a historical standpoint, has brought us to where we are now. And my analysis is that the equitable direction that we take was not necessarily one to adhere to an economic system. It was one driven by a political desire. So some of the social programs and the apparent, or what you call the idea of fair distribution has been politically driven for maintaining of political power. And we see that with the housing distribution. We see that with the materials distribution after Hurricane Maria, that the government of Dominica tend to keep their support base happy and satisfied to keep political power, where sacrificing the productivity sector of the economy. And as such, we see that has driven us back maybe more than 20 years. I mean, Kent maybe in a better position looking from the outside, looking at this the Caribbean Development Bank to see how far that draw us. But I think it has pushed us back even more than 20 years. And Mario again exacerbated the problem. So we are back more than 50 years. So when you compare that to places like St. Kitts, who has taken a more center-right approach towards more productivity, transforming the economy into a more diversified type of economy, trying to maximize all the earnings in the tourism sector while connecting it to the natural environment and the agricultural sector that they provide, then you see that St. Kitts, for example, have been able to achieve a larger percentage of growth than Dominica. What we have experienced in Dominica is a higher rate of inflation, which has driven up the nominal GDP. I mean, from our conversation, we know there's a vast difference between the nominal GDP and the real GDP. So the real GDP in Dominica is what is suffering. We don't produce enough, and as such, the prices on the limited goods that we produce is very high, and we have the imported inflation, which makes the cost of living so very high that to save and invest in even areas of productivity is a big challenge in Dominica. So, from an academic standpoint, I will introduce my contribution with this, and I hope maybe you or Ken can maybe ask for the question or elaborate on my presentation thus far.
Yeah, thank you, Claudius. Kent.
Yes. My experience in the Caribbean, let me tell you, I have done on my own, as a consultant. I have assisted a couple countries to prepare medium-term development strategies or long-term vision documents where they want to be in 20 years and so on. And what we use in doing that is, well, the program, the theory, not theory, but the thinking frame used in coming up with the goals is what is referred to as the conflict management approach. Essentially, it amounts to similar conclusions to what we find in sustainable thinking. But in the constraint management process, you really have to ask, what are the real problems? So beyond the theory, or within the context, within the vertical lens, you have to go below and ask, what are the real challenges that are being faced by countries in seeking to grow their economies, in seeking to improve the quality of life of the people and future generations? You really have to ask, what are the real root causes? And what I've found is a couple of causes that are really similar across countries generally, but the level varies. The significant amount varies from one country to the other. But some of these things apply quite the same to Dominica. Some of the things we have found, for instance, is governance being a significant constraint to development, access to finance being a significant constraint to development, inadequate policy and planning being a significant constraint to development. I happen to think that the current administration in Dominica is not, in essence, socialist regime. They're not, in essence. I mean, they're labeled as center left, and the others are labeled as center right. But I happen to think that is not the issue that is constraining the development of the country. By virtue of the definition of center, if you come close enough to the center, you're not deferring too much. You're basically still all believe in the importance of the private sector, the importance of free economy and free markets. And you also, both sides, still believe in the importance of government assisting those of providing social services, because people fall out of the loop, or there are public goods that need to be provided, or merit goods, if we speak the theory of economics, that need to be allowed for. Both sides believe that. There might be slight differences. I happen to believe it's not the difference between one thing or the other that is causing us to be in the state we are. It's really drilling down to those real causes. Governance. Let's take governance, for instance. Some of the governance challenges really is because of our system. And as a people, like Bill Sheridan Greg was started the program where he's looking at governance and different things recently. I've not been listening to it lately. But there are parts of governance that really has to do with the system of government that we inherited. So let me give an example. Know that a particular tax, we may know the country. Remember, financing is an issue. Remember, I said access to finance is a major issue. We may know fully well that for the government to build an airport, we need to raise taxes. We may know we need to raise more taxes, right? But guess what would happen in our system of governance? Because we are there for 4 years. 5 years, sorry. There's one country that's 4 years, so sometimes I say 4 years because I'm very familiar with people's islands and we have a 4 year cycle. But we are there for 5 years. And guess what? That's the reality of what happened. That's kind of what supposed to get out. The important system, right? We could have the good of that this thinking. If we oppose it, and it's easy to oppose attack, nobody wants to pay tax. For them to jump on. If we oppose the attack, it will give us political points. Even if they may be quite aware that the tax may be necessary. On the other hand, the government may say, or I cannot produce that. Because if I propose that, these other guys will come with it and they'll get a thing. So they will not do what they're supposed to do. So when you're in that stage and you don't do what you're supposed to do, you're not raising the money for the airport, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing because you're so politically conscious of getting back over the next 5 years. You see this 5 year term thing, it's a major hindrance, not just in Dominica, but the Caribbean islands. So that is one element of governance. Now, another element is the corruption element. I may not be able to talk about all of it because but the other element is through corruption. I was saying earlier, I happen to believe that this government, the regime in Dominica, is not truly a socialist party. It might be tolerant and center left. But I think the things they're doing is not because they believe in socialism. I don't believe it's because they believe in center right policy. I think they're doing it simply to bribe people, simply to remain in power, simple political motive. Let's say, for instance, take a policy of $300 pension to one woman. I don't know if such a policy the country can afford it. It's a policy if the country can afford it. For those who are unable to, because otherwise, but these guys will do something so not because they truly believe in that kind of social policy, but because they really want to bribe the electorate. They really, I remember one guy saying to me, we wanted to be involved in our youth thing. And he said, boy, I want to be involved, I'll be in the background, because I am front involved, my mom would not get that $300 pension. So there's a consciousness that it's been used as a bribe. So these guys are not truly, they are doing things because they are trying to bribe the electorate. Point of view. They engage in many activities that are not necessarily the right activities. They are really activities meant for preserving them in power. So the governance element is one of the major hindrances. That's why we really truly have to overcome the governance element. And every other element is related to the government element. And finance is a major thing. And I explained how the link to governance in terms of that. But there are other links. Let me give you another example. I remember as a political leader, there was a gentleman who wanted to run for us in the last election, and he's working with government. He really wants to do it, but he still has a little mortgage to pay and so on. The reality is hard for us to just jump and do this thing. Reality comes knocking. But he has a little business, and my mind's a good business. I said to him, what if we were able to get a couple investors to invest with you? Would you be in a position to take a chance? He said, yeah, I would take a chance. I said, a friend of mine in Barbados who has access to finance. 2 weeks past, I'm not hearing from the guys. I called the guy, I tell him what's going on. He said, boy, it's not the project, there's nothing wrong with the project. But the investors I speak to say there's no way they'll invest in Dominica under this government, because they were quite aware of all the corruption, all the CBI, and all the joke concerning the CBI. So we need to judge our investors. But guess what? Our bad governance, the fact that our government has such a bad reputation out there in the world, let me tell you, they have a real bad reputation that even some investors. No, I'm still trying to overcome that hurdle, because I still believe there are some investors I could reach who will understand what we're trying to do and will come on board. Don't get me wrong, but I'm trying to say to you, we need to bring investments in. Now, we have to have a creative government understanding how do we bring investors in. Well, they met the CBI, and the only thing they can do is the CBI. But guess what? They're not even channeling the CBI in ways that seriously lift Dominica out. So the airport have not been done after how many billions of dollars, and after you have started some private projects. Even when they not private, the CBI funded projects, even when they did this project, it seems to be for personal gain. Look at what happened with Kempinski. We all know that you mean you're preparing such an hotel, you're opening a no guests or very little guests, you mean you have no planning foresight, and you're opening all of these hotels without knowledge of how they're going to come in to the airport and so on. Not to have been a use of this CBI money to really promote Dominica, but to promote this hotels just in the meantime having a sham to mislead people. So access to finance is important, but because these guys are so corrupt and so self-serving, when they get opportunities to ask tax finance, it doesn't end up benefiting Dominica, it ends up benefiting a few. So these are some of the big issues. Planning is important. That's another country you find in the Caribbean. Some countries do it better than others, and there are different elements of planning, not just planning, but also implementation and budget and monitoring and evaluation. These are the practical things you must do well as a government. If you don't do that, some of the countries that are better in the world have proper planning and implementation systems. There are a few countries I can name, but they have those systems in place. Some countries in the Caribbean that are beginning to do better is because they have better planning and implementation systems. But you know what I find with these guys? they're not interested in planning well. They're not interested in that because their interest is on serving themselves. So their strategy is how do I rightly give them a few things, give them forward while making them think that better cannot be done, and not seriously going on it and assessing the skills. We have skills here. I came back, but there are other people. I meet many people in Dominica who look we have Stanford right there with skills. I'm telling you, embrace those skills because anytime you do not have the agenda of helping them with their own self-serving agenda, they don't want questions and they won't ask. So these are the fundamental issues why we have not progressed in Dominica. All boils down to governance, but governance, many of them, lack of planning, lack of policies, and so on and so forth. These are the things that are really keeping us back.
May I ask both gentlemen, you speak of governance issues, corruption, politicization of policies in Dominica, to name a few. Would you say that the government does have good intentions to make Dominica a better place, but just have been ill-advised in how to use the resources? Good intentions, I'm just asking, that the Dominica Labour Party government has had good intentions, but their development policy has not worked. So for example, this government has been involved in a housing revolution. Some people may argue instead of having so much money allocated for social housing, half could have been spent in social housing and the other half into some productive sector. For example, in agro-processing, sending more people to study and making provisions for these graduates to return to Dominica to be part and parcel of the economic development. So I'm asking, is it a question of policy that has held Dominica back, or is it really that this government has just been careless, as Kent argues, that it's all about self-serving as opposed to true development? So I will let Claude just take that question. Do you think that the DLP government is genuinely interested in development?
No, yeah, Josh, to answer that question, I believe you would have to separate yourself from the political, environment. You would have to be able to, separate yourself and look at it, for what it is. So if you would speak to a government person, for example, right, they would tell you it is good intention, but their good intention would be their objective, their goal, which is, and I think Kent and I agree to that, maybe in different utterances, that is politically driven. They want to remain in power because remaining in power gives them access to the resources of the state that they will fulfill the second desire, which is just their own self desire, right? Whether it's through corrupt acts to empower themselves financially or to use the authority they have to get the benefits of whatever flows within that stream of things. So from a Dominica Labour Party standpoint, they would say it's good intention because the objective of staying in power has been met. If you look at it from progressive economic development, economic growth, upgrading the standard of living, then they are on the wrong path because we have seen that when a government, and Kent and I cannot have a slight difference on the idea of the center left and the center right, but if you are center right pushing towards efficiency, then you want to maximize the output of the scarce resources you have, then that will entail having a proper plan, very specific and measurable objectives, having an organization set up that will ensure that your programs and your implementation stages are in place. You would have mechanisms to evaluate and monitor, and at the end, if you didn't achieve your goals, you go back to the drawing board with more objectives of planning. And at the end, you see progressing whatever endeavor objective that you set forward to. However, on the center left, which is all about the command, having a few people come in control of the entire resources like we have now, the Prime Minister is Minister of everything in Dominica. And as such, to have that level of control, it has to be a close-to command system with people agreeing to everything that he does. And once you make that sacrifice or that trade-off, then the whole idea of the planning and the monitoring and the controlling to the second class seat. it's about equity distribution. Equity distribution in the sense that you try to please as much as the population as you can, so they keep voting you in power. So to answer your question, the current administration for the last 20 years has been very poor, has failed in planning, they have failed in implementation, they have also failed in monitoring and evaluation, and as such, the economic strides that would have made, or strides or improvement would have made, has been sacrificed on the altar of staying in political power for as long as they can.
Kent,
Yes, indeed. I agree. I agree. I will tell you, I was so shocked to hear it, but I'll tell you what someone told me. But when they told it to me, you know, when you expect something, but when someone tells you something, it's like, really, boy? Although you should have expected it. But I was speaking to a guy, and he was saying to me, he had the direct information that he was speaking to Mr. Skerritt some time ago. And I don't know how long ago it was, but it seemed to me to have been many years back, while he been prime minister. And the gentleman said that the conversation was about developing Dominica. And this gentleman was saying that this prime minister is saying to him, Pero and this guy is talking about doing things to develop Dominica as a means of ensuring that people will keep voting them. But he tell them, fellas, that's nonsense, man. All you have got to do is give people something and you have their loyalty forever. That's the mindset that this guy, not Peru. You see, we could have talked about center right and center left if Peru was there, possibly, or if Ruzi was there. It would have been more of a genuine case of wanting to pursue one policy, some policies that generally left or center. It appears that that's the policy they are pursuing, but I'm saying for reason, not for the pure reason of philosophy. That is what these guys said. All about lying. So do they have good intentions? My answer is no. Do they really want to develop Dominica? My answer is no. That's the most important. You said it, yes. That is the most important thing to them. Is that good intention? If you want, I mean, I can't fault anybody if you wanted to remain in power. But if you want to remain in power, the country must do better. And let the country doing better be the reason for people re-electing you. But this guys want to remain in power. That is there.
Kent, you just said something there, making the country better. I've listened to both gentlemen. In essence, you all share a lot in common as far as your perspective on the economic situation in Dominica for the past 20 years. You are saying that this current administration has put its political agenda before the people's agenda. It is more interested in staying in office before it really develops the people. So some governments will want to stay in office, but they measure their contention to stay in office against their performance. How many jobs they create, how they lower the standard of living, how they increase exports, how they increase salaries. But unlike most governments in this world, our governments seem to be interested in bribing the people, in giving things, social programs. I give you an apartment, I expect you to be loyal to me. I will give you some gardeners, be loyal to me. I will send your child to study, be loyal to me. Now, the government could get loyalty in a different way, where it could create an enabling environment for people to work, for employers to be able to pay their employees more money, for everyone throughout the country, for those who are interested in working, to be able to get a job at a reasonable standard. But you're saying that's not the case. Now, in view of your position, had you been the prime minister, and I'm taking that question to both of you, Kent, I'll start with you. Had you been the prime minister of Dominica for the past 20 years, what you would have done differently to what Skerritt did in view of VAT revenues, CBI revenues, grant revenues, and tax revenues, and non-tax revenues? What policy would you have taken differently to Roosevelt Skerritt?
Thanks. That's a good question. Well, let's start with being honest with the people. That is one thing I pride myself in. I will always be honest, and I will try to sell the truth and honesty. And if for any reason the truth cannot be sold, or people decide that this is not work and will vote you out because of that, that's okay. I can live with that. But that's what I'm determined. So what's the truth? When 20 years ago we had significant fiscal challenges, there was a program to fix it. And that program was fairly successful in terms of stabilizing the fiscal situation. I'm bringing in some resources, able to get payment of staff back online and stuff like that. But that is where the good things stopped. That should have been built upon. But to build upon that, you have to be able to overcome your political challenges or your perceived challenges when it comes to taking tough decisions. I would have gone to the country and say, look, the next big thing, now that we have stabilized the country, the next big thing is that we need to grow the tourism. And tourism was especially big. And of course, we have agriculture as well. But we need to grow the country, and tourism was a major part. But how do we grow tourism? And there are several ways. But one of the important things is the airport. But how do you get an airport? You either have to get a loan or you have to raise financing. How do you raise financing? When I say financing, taxes. But even if you get a loan, you still ultimately may have to raise taxes, or unless that loan is so, it causes the airport to come in quickly and to cause businesses to grow quicker, and therefore your taxes without raising tax levels is able to repay. I would have gone to people and say, look, we're going for this loan, and I'm confident that we will be able to generate the hotels that will allow us to pay it. But in the event it doesn't happen as quickly, please know we will have to raise taxes, or if not raise taxes, would have to, actually I would maybe not go towards raising taxes. You would have to look at the situation, but I would more go towards we'd have to make some serious adjustments in terms of expenditure switching. There are times when you have to say, okay, our allocation for community development is A, our allocation for education is A, our allocation for health is A. Oh, sorry, they all can be A, but yeah, they could all be A, but whatever it is. And we've got to say, okay, if we are so convinced that this airport is so important, then let's put our money where our mouth is. If we don't want to raise taxes, then let's cut everybody by 5% so that we have this money is available so we can service a loan on the airport. But you got to be willing to face the opposition if that comes to it. They may say, I'm not saying our opposition would have, they may say, but because they see the same thing I'm going back to our political system and people being self-serving. But that is what I would do. You would have had to try to put money to the airport. I mean, I use the airport because that's an important asset. The airport would have helped to save Ross. Ross partly left because we didn't have access. You see how critical the airport has been. Europe always knew our airport was critical. A lot of us knew that. All governments knew that. But these guys have not moved. So I would have moved to do the real things, the reallocation in expenditure that would have caused us to be able to do a loan, get a loan, or put some monies aside to do the airport. Now remember that time we had the CBI, but it wasn't as easy right now. It was the old program that was started under Mary Junior Charles. Okay, so it's a good thing if they were to relook the program, or well, there was a program that was partly re-engineered by UWP as well. So it's a good thing if you were to decide, let's relook that program and let's raise some financing. This government have had some success in doing this, and we know in the last 3 years, if we listen to the good work done by the leader of the opposition in terms of getting the information together, he says Dominica maybe collected more than 3 million. And when you subtract what was actually received in the treasury, there's a shortfall, so to speak, of 3.2 billion. Correct me if I'm wrong. Right?
1.2 billion.
Right, 1.2 billion, or I think it increased to 3.something billion that is not accounted for.
Right.
So when you have access to that kind of money, and remember, don't forget, we're talking about you are beginning to re-engineer the CBI program. And you are planning for 5, 6, 7 big hotels. Penkinski, the guy in Soufriere, and Nishi, and all of these projects. These are good if you plan for them. But you're doing that and you're not using some of that significant flows from CBI. So first, if you didn't take the loan long ago to do it, you now have another opportunity for the CBI to do that, and you're still not doing it.
Hotels have opened, and now you're talking about in the airport. And now I'm not even sure if they have the money or they can get the money. I think they're putting a fast one over people's eye as to whether they will actually get that money, because I think the CBI is under threat. Now the CBI is under threat. Now you're saying you want to do an airport. I hope it's done, because I really wish it to be done. Except I want it to be done well, with proper consultation with the people of Western. But these are the things would have been done differently. I would have first gone for the airport, then readjust my finances. That's just one element. The other element, I would have brought in people who knew what they were talking about. You know, what I as well experience is part of what a good country does is recognize the strength of people everywhere. Exposure that people get everywhere. All kinds of ways. When I see diaspora and I say, oh, wow, I wish we could use some of that talent that is being Dominica and use it. That is fun. Because people agriculture, what would have been talking about the book, talking about shipping? Is anybody doing anything about it? The government promises and promises, and it never done. Shipping is an area and would should be addressed. But there are not number of policy strategies that in the area of in several areas that I would have done a lot different. I mean, we can touch this as well on what I do ever get a chance to say something. So I was talking about specific orders, policies, but I just want to mention some of these big things that would have been done. There would be no corruption. I was ended that point. I was talking to one of my brothers today, and I was saying to him, you know, if a new government comes in, and even if they have no new ideas about policy, about anything, they have no new ideas. But all they are is honest. That alone is all they are is honest. Don't prevent people from getting jobs. Don't try to get it away. Like Thompson had a very good program where he was trying to cash in schematic. They sabotage that. Don't get in people's way. Let the private sector have its way and do what they do. If you just even if you have no new ideas, that alone would have been enough to cause Dominica progress. So these you would have definitely no option from the government that I would have prime minister from my group. Yeah. Anyway, let me stop there, and then I mean I can come in later, but let's stand for the shadow.
You're right. And Kent, I suspect it's not your fault, but your audio is terrible.
Yeah.
There seems to be some connectivity issue.
Wow.
Yes, Claudius.
Yeah, Josh. A very good question. Very, very interesting question. And I will take my risks in answering this one. I think as a Kalinago person who did not whose ancestors were not, you know, receiving the hard end of the whip so much, and we resisted the slavery days so much, I maybe have a more outward look on things, and that I ask myself sometimes in Dominica, what have we learned 400 years or 200 years, whatever number of years it is, with and after slavery, you know? And sometimes we elect leaders into position, and we don't see the revolutionary kind of, you know, vision that takes us as further away from the whole plantation mentality, you know. And I say that because when we look at the Caribbean and Dominica specifically, the Europeans were able to come in here and extract many of our resources and enrich themselves and make the famous Paris, the famous London, and all these big cities in Europe from the wealth they extracted from the Caribbean region and, you know, other colonies. And we have learned that history over and over for centuries. Sometimes I ask myself, you know, when we elect leaders, we go there and see that, hey, can we now, as true Caribbean people who now own the land, from the economic system, from the political system? Can we do things differently to extract wealth and build wealth within our own country, just as the Europeans did, right? So the question, saying that as a answer, the question is that we need to reevaluate ourselves. We need to know what we have. We have the human resources, we have the natural resources. And most of what I see has happened over the years with leadership in Dominican government, that people come in there and they continue the same process, just trying to outdo each other, trying to suppress the former political party or the opposition party and do things that will just happen in the system. And nothing is really being done to revolutionize the whole economic and the political system. So I would have looked differently. I would have looked at our human resource, at what is necessary within the human resource capabilities of Dominica that matches our economic sectors and our economic drivers in the economy. And I would start with the modification of the education system to make our young people and the human resource or the labor force more productive through the education system so that they can extract the most wealth they can from the existing natural resources in the country. So I would have, not just a one stream kind of leadership style, but this is one of the many streams I would have taken on this, right? And secondly, we would need to look at what are our strengths in Dominica, for example. If we concentrate specifically in Dominica, we know we have strengths in that we have a lot of water, we have the surrounded by we have natural, fertile soil, and we have people committed, to hard work. So how do we create a synergy of these resources into something that will progress us towards having the right infrastructure that we need, having the right health facilities that we need, having the right attitudes and behaviors and mindset towards progressive thinking and action. So what have we done for the last 20 years with hydroelectricity? We have gone trying to do things in geothermal, and we didn't even measure the success rate of our hydroelectric capacity, which has not failed us for over 50 years, maybe 40 years, with the plant in Loda and Trafalgar, right? We didn't explore to say, okay, how can we make this more efficient? How can we distribute it among the country, not necessarily have it in one location? Do the cost and effect of those things. We just went in. There was funding available to us. How can we spend that money? How can we watch some of that money? How can we filter some of that money? And after spending $90 million, for example, in the geothermal sector, we yet to light a bulb. You see what I'm saying? Whereas if we had done a thorough data research analysis, we could have seen the success rate of the hydro plant. Maybe we could have two smaller plants in the north and in the south of the country joining the grid and bringing down the cost of electricity so much that we have so much more production in manufacturing. So again, I would have, my approach would have been let's look inwards from there. Let's explore where we have our strengths. Let's explore the resources that we have. Let's look at the synergies that we need in the energy sector, the tourism sector, the agriculture sector. How can we bring all this together in a comprehensive way and move the country, forward? Leadership sometimes you take very hard decisions that you may not like. And the thing about politics in Dominica now, and maybe the Caribbean, is that politicians, when they get in there, they feel so comfortable, they want to leave. So they try to do what the masses would please the masses, and they sacrifice that to what is really necessary to make the country move forward. And maybe if I was the Prime Minister for the last 20 years, I would not be very much alike. But the vision of what I have for the country would maybe be bearing fruit by now. Maybe we wouldn't be going through what we're going through now. Maybe we would be much happier, and then we would see something as in a better light. Yeah. And there are other areas I mean, not to, but I think, as I say, I take my risk. And there are other areas I would have taken too. Let's look at the reality of the scenario. The Labour Party have been able to have 18 free majority in Parliament on 2 in the election. And what has been done to revolutionize, to modify the whole political system in Dominica? Nothing has been done. And
Absolutely
I
not.
keep telling myself, and Ken kind of alluded to that earlier in his presentation, the governance system in the Caribbean, what we inherited from colonial times, has not really worked for us, and nobody has really ventured into making any changes of that. So I'll take my chances tonight, Joshua, on your program and put forward a model that maybe Kent and I can talk about it after and see if we can succeed in bringing that forward. Is that why is it that we still have the two political system in the Caribbean, following the Westminster system of politics that we inherited from the colonial time? Why isn't it that with education, with technology, with creativity, we have not came up with our own, hybrid, style of governance? And I would suggest that going forward, and somebody maybe would take it on and think about it. Let us get into the system where we bring our best minds and our best talents and best competencies forward. Let's get away from that political divide that discriminate, instill fear, suppress people that are progressive because they don't share their political ideology. And let's expose our constituencies to choose people they think that have the best competence, best education system, best vision, and let these people come forward in a collaborative way with a model similar to a board of directors. So let them sit together without having the objective of opposing or disagreeing, but finding common solutions. And let these people be the ones to hire and employ the PSCs and the Minister of Education and all the high, level technocrats that we need to really drive our economy. I mean, I can give more details to that model, but I'll just leave it here for now. Joshua. Maybe we can elaborate if you so wish.
Yeah, very well. Yeah, thank you, Claudius. No,
Francis, allow me to just touch on two feelings that my brother touched on, because he's so right. But let me just relate it back to what I'm saying.
yes,
Claudius, you're so right when you say we have so much in Dominica. We have so much. It's not easy country to develop, but we have so much. We have geothermal resources. We have wind and solar energy. We have fertile soils. We have a reputation as a nature island and so on. So there is something we can build on. The question is, what in doing that, what would have done differently? And you mentioned one or two things. Let me take one of them, for instance. You mentioned geothermal. And I want to relate it back to what I was saying. I would have liked this government also pursue geothermal. Of course, you would have been within the context of a proper study, or you would have also looked at the other renewables, okay? Subject to what your study show, I most possibly would have also pursued geothermal. But these guys are pursuing geothermal, and they're not succeeding at it. The question becomes why? The French pulled out, no explanation. But you know what I think and I suspect happened? The French was no longer willing to go along with a corrupt government in pursuing the geothermal project. So you see, when I say that corruption is a major hindrance, so it's not like they don't want to pursue those things, but they are so corrupt in doing it that even when they decide to do things that are good, it doesn't work. So what we would have done differently is not that we would not pursue it, we would pursue it without corruption. Every time an investor comes, you're trying to get something from him. A bona fide investor will be fed up with that and he will leave. I just suspect what happened with the French. If that is not what happened with the French, let the government come with documented proper explanations as to why the French or whoever else was involved left. If there is indeed, if the World Bank still wants to be engaged with us, it means that if there's like the World Bank wants to engage, but the French pulled out, there isn't. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm talking about. Now let's look at agriculture. And I just mentioned our people bringing skills. That's exactly what we're not going to do. Their skills are sweet in the diaspora and in Dominica that we never access because it's not a way choose to access. How do we grow our agriculture? What stuff is market intelligence? How many Dominicans do proper marketing and they are not in Dominica? And that's the emotion working through there. These things we will do better. We need to be done better.
but because of the political mindset, they stop seeing what is to be done or even wanting to do the right things when it comes to development. So I just wanted to touch on those two little points to link it into the fact that it's not so much sometimes they have a different position, but they're so mindful or so dependent so much on the corrupt that or they have no desire to do the right thing. It's really a shame. Anyway, I just wanted to put that in there.
Yeah, thank you, Kent. We also want to pay attention to what our followers are saying. And we urge people to ask questions, to make comments. So far, I'm noting that a number of persons are saying that they have difficulties in hearing us, particularly Kent. We're not too sure what the problem is this evening. We sincerely apologize for the audio difficulties. However, for those of you who have just joined the program, we're looking at the economy of Dominica. We have not come to the big question whether Dominica's economy is on the verge of collapse. We're just having a prelude. We're having an overview of the economic situation, where we were, where we are, and where we are going. And we just summed up on, had Kent or Claudius been the Prime Minister of Dominica, what would they have done differently to Roosevelt's carrot? And Kent said, well, zero tolerance for corruption. So he would be a Prime Minister of integrity, because he seemed to have the view that one of the main impediments to our economic growth in Dominica is that the current leader and his cabinet seem to be more self-serving and engaged in corruption, something that he certainly would not have had in his administration. And of course, Claudius implied to that as well. Claudius would have taken some different policy decisions, and Kent himself, they spoke about several economic sectors, tourism, agriculture. Claudius points out that a wise leader looks at what he has. You know, you have to look at what you have. What advantage do you have to your neighbors? What can you sell? What can you produce? And we have the soils, we have the water. Of course, he spoke about geothermal energy, and Kent supported that as well. I would just say that in as much as the government of Dominica has been the main economic driver in terms of policies, I believe that too little has been done for the private sector. Small businesses, entrepreneurship. Small businesses growth is very important in any economy, even in the great economies in the world. You want to create an environment for entrepreneurship. We have a problem in Dominica where we have bright people with good ideas, but they do not have the capital. And the banks have not been very friendly. I know that Aid Bank has made some facilities available for persons to go in and get loans at 1%. But even then, people have to come up with security, which is lacking. Again, that is a manifestation of where we are in Dominica. A lot of young people just cannot start. And I believe that it is important that a leader of a country creates an environment to encourage entrepreneurship, to encourage small businesses. And I didn't hear Kent or Claudia's comments on the CBI. I'm not too sure whether either one of them would necessarily push the CBI in the manner in which Roosevelt Carrot has pushed the CBI program, because they are fallouts. Because I could say, and I can say, had I been the Prime Minister of Dominica, I probably would not push the CBI program the manner in which it is being pushed. Right now, Dominica's passport is the cheapest in the world. There's no limit. There seems to be no policy on the number of passports we can sell in a year, in a 5-year period, in a 10-year period. And I fear that there will come a time when we'll get a backlash to this program, because we're just selling our passports. There is no policy in Dominica which speaks to the rights of an economic citizen relative to an indigenous citizen or someone who was born here. As it is right now, it seems to us that an economic citizen shared all rights that we in Dominica share. He can come in to vote when he wants. There's no policy in respect to that. You know, so of course, if we were to spend the night talking about what we would do, we could go on and on and on, because you're looking at various areas. You're looking at tourism, agriculture, exports, the productivity issues, the political culture, the type of work ethic we have in Dominica, what has been done to improve it, the human resource base in terms of ensuring that we curb the brain drain which is happening in Dominica. People get trained, we send people to study, there's no program for them to come back. We're giving away resources. It's nice that we train our people, but we really do not have a program to get them to come back. So we can go on and on and on. But guys, I want to make this broadcast very simple. Where we are in Dominica right now, as we speak, you must be hearing the people on the streets. Things are hard. Things are tough. You're hearing small business owners complaining. People are telling you they're just working from hands to mouth. You're hearing our public servants, they too. Think about it, somebody's getting $2,500 a month. The mortgage is $1,600. Then that person has a car loan. That person has a child at university. Think about it. Hands to mouth. People cannot get jobs. You have qualified people being underemployed. So you have an unemployment problem, underemployment problem, and you have a high cost of living, disposable incomes low. So we really have a situation in Dominica, and I want you gentlemen to speak to that. Of course, Claudius just came from the Kalinago territory. He has seen some progress as far as the housing stock is concerned. 10 years, 15 years ago, there were not so many Kalinagos with concrete structures as it is right now. But apart from this housing situation, can you say the Kalinago people have become more independent, more economically viable? Has agriculture improved? Has this government done anything within that catchment area or anywhere else in Dominica outside of Roseau and Portsmouth that has been able to create job opportunities? That is, I want you to speak to that. Where we are and where are we going? And that's why the big question is, are we on the verge of a collapse? Because you're looking at a government that has collected a lot of money from China and Venezuela for grants, billions of dollars for the CBI program. Yet, when we look at Dominica, you have to ask yourself, where did that money go? So guys, from your experience on the ground, what do you think? Where are we going? Is this economy going to turn around? Yes, we're living in a COVID era, and you probably wish whether the government has been managing the economy very well in view of the pandemic, COVID. Where are we going? Are we on the verge of collapse? I think it's going to get better.
All right. So Josh, very interesting question. And again, being an economist in the field, of academics, doing the academic teaching all the while, there are very clear evidence if you take your time and you just observe, no matter where your political divide is. Once you have some intelligence and you observe Dominica, you can see we are heading in the wrong direction. As to whether we'll have a collapse, I am yet to concrete that kind of conclusion, but we have signs that we are heading there, and I'll tell you some of them. If you study the data, the statistics, we're talking economics, so we're talking about GDP, and you look at the real GDP of Dominica from 2016 to 2019. If you go as far back as 2015, from 2015 to 2019, 2020, the real GDP of the country, that is after you take out for inflation and you calculate actual production, real GDP, has been lower than the government budgetary expenditure from 2015 to 2020. So in other words, the real GDP of our country has been less than what the government is spending in the economy. Right? Now, as of 2019-2020, the government spent about $1.2 billion in the budgetary allocations that is government expenditure for the year. Our actual nominal GDP for that year was $1.5 billion. So in the economy, the government is spending from those figures nominally over 78% of the nominal GDP is contributed by the government. So once you take that into consideration, you realize that the employment scenario in the country is also about 80% of the employed people in the country is by the government. If you start with the NEP workers up to the PSs of 15 or 16 ministries. So that means the private sector is only taking about 20% of the totally employed people in the country. Now, that again is already bad signs, right? When you then you take that further, you look at the health sector. Over the last 20 years, there's no new private health entity emerged in the country. There is no new private educational entity emerged in the country. As a matter of fact, Ross left as a private education institution in the country. All since I hardly hear about them. They really may be struggling in the current situation. So we have not extended the private sector at all, and you make mention of that earlier. So the private sector under this government for the last 20 years have actually shrunk. It shrinked, and as such, production has shrinked. So no longer you have the manufacturing firms, the Coca-Cola, the Bello factories, and this small cottage industry. All of them has left, has gone. So we actually importing everything except the few agricultural products we have done. There have been no innovation or value added in agriculture. The hucksters who are doing a little trade to bring in their foreign exchange, these people are struggling. They don't have the support of the government in technical training, in packaging. There's nothing has been done. They have been left on their own. Right now, the farmers totally left on their own until Maria. After Maria, the government coming for the subsidy for the World Bank. So currently, you could say currently as we speak, agriculture is on a little rise in terms of production. But as soon as that subsidy is exhausted, I fear what will come, because the little fertilizer and the little stuff you get from the bank, subsidy from the government, from the World Bank, when that is done, the farmers have to go back on their own to get their inputs and get their planting materials and so on. It's going to go back to where it was already. There's no sustainable program, because even with the World Bank issue, there has not been a component of marketing, a component of value adding or agro processing. Nothing has been catered for in the World Bank program. All the money has come, and they have politicized it. This is another sad thing. They politicize it so much that once you register as a farmer, you get input. There was no assessment of production, there was no value of productivity was no value can be added, and through your return you can sustain the farm when the subsidy is over. When you look at those signs, you can really see that if not the CBI, then we are in problem. And as Kentley rightly said, I think it is on the decline. And as such, the revenue generated from the CBI, the high taxes that we have in Dominica, and we must admit that this government has reaped the most tax revenue of all governments in the history of the country. From income tax in 25, 15, that means 15% across the board. They have generated the most revenue any government has done. But again, you see here, they have no choice, because productivity in the country is so low, the private sector is so stifled that the little tax revenue that they gathered, which they haven't brought back in the current has to be in employing so many people to keep them somewhat base happy that they cannot give public servants a rise. So they have to take all the supporters all on appointed positions all over the place to get some level of income so they can and as such there is no modification, no improvement. Public servants can get a rise. Infrastructure in public service is terrible. If you take, for example, the state college, if you have to look, I will invite you on take a drive up at the state college to look at the state of the vocational section of the college after Maria. After Maria, the library has not been able to function. economic section, the electrical and all these vocational skills sectors, public college, is in shambles. So the government has not been able to efficiently use the capital to improve the infrastructure, the public service infrastructure, what we call the public goods. They have not been able to give a rise, and our people kind of has agreed that the situation bad and they are not making any fuss about it. The other thing that is that the government being the biggest employer on the island have to stretch its resources to ensure the infrastructure. So when you look at those signs and you see nothing really innovative happening, no expansion in the private sector, no new industries coming on board, they have not taken advantage of the ganja industry, the cannabis industry. They have just allowed it just to get the young voters, you can carry a certificate, this and that. Nothing commercial and lucrative about that. The whole policy of this, they have not reduced VAT or any of the taxes to allow them to have more spending power to consumption that will boost the private sector. So when you look at that trajectory, I mean, I think we can see that it will eventually crash. As to conclusively when, that is left to be seen, but things are going to get really worse before we see this kind of
Yeah, thank you, Claudius. We have our followers here continually saying that our audio is terrible tonight. Once again, I apologize. I'm not too sure what is the problem.
maybe you should mute your mic while I don't know. Do you do that when others are talking? I mean, when we are talking, maybe you should mute your mic. I don't know if that.
Yeah, I'll try that. I'm not too sure whether that will help. But we need to start paying attention to some of the questions that are being asked. Earl Bruno, good evening and welcome. He says, so why not concluding that the economy has collapsed? I think, Claudius, earlier you mentioned that you're not too sure whether you can crystallize whether our economy has collapsed. Earl is asking, why are we not concluding that the economy has collapsed? So I don't know whether Ken want to take a shot at that.
Yes, well, actually, when I saw Earl,
yes.
Anyway, when I saw Earl's comment, I smiled because in my mind, that's exactly what I was going to say. And I saw his comment. I'm like, wow. But you're asking some very pointed question. We want us to face reality. What is the real situation on the ground? Is the economy doing very bad? Let me answer them in summary first, and then I'll come back. Is the economy doing very bad? Definitely. Are we heading towards a collapse? Maybe we have already collapsed, but a few things seem to be propping us up. I'll come back to that. Can it be fixed? Can it be salvaged? Yes, but in three possible ways. One, if for any reason this government decides to do the right thing and begin to take the hard decisions, and two, if we were to get this government out, because I don't think one is very likely, if we were to get this government out, and number three, if we were to decide as a people, as many of us who decide to put our heads and minds together, to ensure that we do everything, even if it's not our role, despite this government, to do everything we can to make sure our country doesn't fall. And that's where I am. And since my resignation, I've spoken to a number of persons, and before that, I've spoken to a number of persons. But the kinds of discussions I'm talking to people about is, how do we rescue Dominica in spite of this government? How do we do what they are not doing that they are supposed to be doing? Even if it's not our job as politicians, not our job as individuals, how do we make that extra sacrifice to do what this government is supposed to do to rescue this country? In the process of rescuing the country, we'll liberate people, we'll bring hope to people, and hopefully it will contribute to them deciding to remove this government. But even if that's not the decision, how do we rescue this country? And that's what I am determined to contribute to doing. And I've had talks with people from UWP, talks with people from APP, talks with people who are traditionally associated with the Freedom Party, who understand what I'm talking about. They understand it's not going to be easy. And you know what they understand too? And some of them tell me, this guy's going to try to stop you. I tell them, yes, he's going to try to stop me.
but I'm ready for that. I'm ready for that. But enough said. But let's go back to the first one. Is the country, how is the country? How are we doing? Let me tell you, man. When you talk to people on the ground, sometimes you have to reach out. You're ready to cry and wish that personally from your own pocket, you could dip your hand in your pocket and contribute something. We have just lost Joshua. I don't know why. I'm not sure if people can hear. Somebody could send us a note if you're still hearing us. Say that you're still hearing us, or send us something out there. But we have just lost, at least I'm not seeing Joshua. I've lost Joshua. Anybody, can you just note to us that so somebody says that, somebody tell us whether you can still hear us? Just type in a note. Okay, Joshua is back.
Yes, he's here, yeah.
All right, good. Joshua is back. Great. All right, so I was saying, let's talk about the reality in the ground. And it hurts my heart every time I speak to people. Just yesterday, speaking to someone in the field of tourism, and it hurt my heart because they're struggling. They are struggling. Now, it's not, COVID definitely is making things a lot worse. We know that. So I am not going to stand here and deny that COVID is not a reason why we're in trouble. But the fact is, it's on top of the trouble we were already in. Before COVID, we had Maria. But Maria is something we would have overcome because, if you have insurance, you could have overcome with a good government and a thriving economy, you could easily overcome. But even before Maria and before Erica, and for a long while now, there have been bad governance and the country has been weak. We have been dependent only, or saving grace has been the sale of passports. And we can talk about another time as to whether or not that is something we should. I am a kind of in your camp, Joshua, on that, but that's maybe another whole discussion. But these people are crying. I speak to farmers. I have relatives and my in-laws who are farmers. I have friends, good friends who are farmers. They tell you straight, they are not earning anymore. They are not earning kinds of money. They are struggling to sell their dashings. And if they do grow it, it's a real struggle out there. I am telling you, I meet people who don't have housing, don't know what to do. And let me tell you something, I say housing specifically, let's stop on your housing. And the government seem to think that they're doing the country such a big favor with housing. And I appreciate when you give housing to persons who cannot afford. But see where we are in Dominica. We had a situation when our country was thriving. You know how many farmers, I'm sure you saw it in Kalinago territory, my brother. I saw it in St. Joseph, which is my in-laws were farmers. Well, they are farmers. Well, they were older now. I saw people build their houses. As a matter of fact, I remember there was a time when I came from school. There was the high day in bananas. And I kind of did some dashings myself. My in-laws gave me an acre or so, and I did a little bit of dashings and so on. And I remember telling myself the amount they were earning then with 5-7 acres of land. I had told myself if I had 5 acres of land, I might have chosen, if I had a degree in economics, I might have chosen to go into agriculture rather than to go into to go earn $3,000 with a degree, because he was earning twice, 3 times that with 7 acres of land. And these people are not earning, and these people were able to build their own houses. So how it is that you want to make such a boast of the houses you're giving when it's really a reflection of how weak and how poor the economy is, that someone cannot even earn enough. A farmer cannot even earn enough. It hurts. Just saying that to you now, it's hurtful. Cannot even earn enough to build himself a house or to repair his house. I have a very hardworking friend who is both in agriculture and in construction. And thank God for the World Bank project. He was approved to get some help. But this is a hardworking man that cannot sell enough produce to help himself, my brother. This is a hardworking man that cannot get enough construction or agriculture sales to be able to build himself a house. I'm not talking about a gigantic house. I'm just talking about something decent for him to go in. And thank God the World Bank was there and he was able to get that. But the housing program in itself is not a reflection of the country doing good. And that's how they want to sell it, that we are giving you a house. But think of it, how poor the economy is, how weak the economy is, that people cannot even help themselves after a hurricane. They don't have access to insurance, which they should have had if the country economy was doing well, people were able to insure their houses, farmers were able. I mean, it's really an indictment on us.
Thank God for those who get, and I appreciate that, those who get, right? But the people are crying, and I hear it every time I speak to people. It hurts my heart. When I spoke to that lady yesterday, I was really sorry that I didn't immediately have a couple $1,000,000 to bail her off a loan. And on top of that, you have CBI resources. And as I said, we can have another discussion on the CBI. But if you're going to use the CBI, how could you be using it to give your friends $60 million bonuses or whatever they took from Penkinski, whatever it was, or others who seem to be having, so to speak, free reign and free access to money? And your local tourism sector, these guys are struggling. You have people, especially with COVID, you cannot use some of those earnings, those monies that you say you're going to use into housing option and whatever, to help bail out some of your tourism people. These people are going to fail if something doesn't happen soon. And it's going to get worse. Already they're not employing and they had to release people, but they themselves going to be at a point where they're not even going to be able to eat, pay their mortgages or pay insurance. It hurt my heart to speak to that person yesterday. And these are the kinds of things: farmers, hoteliers, fish. Well, I have not spoken to many fishermen lately, but people are struggling. I believe there are many people who are unable. You started talking about, Joshua, the cost of living and the amount. I'm not sure how much time we will have on this program. Is this a 2-hour program? But I had done something some time ago, and I was prepared to share some of it tonight. I'm not sure I'll do it right now. But if you look at the earnings, the amounts people earn, and if you were to do a check on what they earn, the taxes they pay, and the other expenses, you would realize, even for middle class, if what we may call middle class, let's say someone who teaches and someone who's a nurse, that's pretty much like you, Sanford. but if you were to look at the reality at those persons, and you were to take out the amount that they pay for rent, the amount that they pay for a car, the amount that they pay if they have children and so on, at the end of the day, you realize these people have no money. They cannot entertain sending their children to school. They can hardly buy insurance. What we call good jobs, people struggle even then to make, far less for those who do not have good jobs. Those who, if you are a construction worker, unskilled worker, earning $75, $50, $60, $75, and your wife maybe works at Astafans or something, earning $800 a month, you put that together, these people can hardly eat well. I remember talking to a friend of mine. I'm talking about, I'm an economist. I'm not even talking economic jargon to you tonight. I spoke with someone, and they were going through some challenges, and I was thinking of how I could help them personally, how I could personally help them. And because those of you who may not know, I am going big time into farming, but I in my mind, I'm like, but maybe I could help this person out a little bit by giving them some vegetables. Maybe it would help them to reduce their vegetable costs, thinking that vegetable was a significant cost for them. Because personally, I remember before I was into farming, I do some of my own vegetables now, but before I was into farming, I remember spending about $200 a week, in $150, $200 a week in vegetables. No, that's important for health. I may not buy some other extravagant things, but I made sure I invested in my health. We bought vegetables, we bought coconut water, and so on. I used to go to the market every Saturday. All of those who missed me in the market, sorry, because I begin to grow my own thing now, but I used to be there every Saturday. So I'm telling myself, boy, listen, how can I help this person? Maybe once my produce start to come in regularly, I can help them and relieve them of the cost of their vegetables. That's a contribution I can make. So here I go asking them, how much do you spend on vegetables? Trying to determine how much of a difference it would make. And I was shocked at the answer. The person said to me, you know something? I only buy vegetables when I can. I'm like, wow. Vegetables becomes an option for people. I'm like, wow. Which means that health suffers. Let me tell you, in this COVID period and so on, I'm not a health expert. Sanford, you might be more of a health expert than me. You're married to one. but I think what we eat is so important. And here, my friend is telling me, in other words, I could help her, but it will not be helping her with her bills because she doesn't spend on vegetables. You follow what I'm saying? So it shows you that even people who seem to have reasonable job and you think they're okay, they're not eating well.
We cannot have this in this country. We have to move this country to a point where we are thriving, where we are prosperous, that every single Dominican can have a well-balanced, nutritious meal. Can have access to housing, yes, but part of the access to housing must come because they can have sustainable jobs, they can have good jobs, right? And they can have dignity earning their houses. They don't have to bow to someone and support wrongdoing just to get a house. And sometimes it's not even that they're giving people these houses, you know. Sometimes all they do is dangle the thing. They make them think that their turn is coming. Evil, man, evil, wickedness in this place. But the realities of our people are economically are not in a very good place, and we need to change that. Right? So are we going to get to a disaster? Is it going to implode? I believe it has already has. Not it has not imploded, but we are already in a disaster. I have been thinking lately, how are these guys able to continue doing what they're doing? Because I know they're under stress. I know they're owing many people. I will not itemize the debts that they have, but clearly the fiscal is under stress. We know that. We know that from some of the information we have had. But on the surface of it, they are fixing the roads. When I say fixing the road, they're maintaining the potholes. I think they have chosen to do the things that somehow that still seem to give people the impression that things are maybe not going down. But I think things are going down, but they're just choosing to do certain things. How they're doing it, either because they are building up arrears in other areas, owing a whole set of money, not paying debt, and therefore using it for the roads and paying servants, but they're building debts in other areas, either that, or somehow they have a way of bringing in illicit money. That we need to investigate. Because it should have already imploded. It maybe it's rock bottom already, but somehow they seem to be doing these surface things. But I think it's a matter of time till you will see some of the more explosive reactions. But part of the reason why we are maybe still in the game a bit is because there are a number of other things that underlie the economy. The fact that we haven't collapsed totally is maybe because of a number of things. One, I would give credit to a number of our diaspora people. Many of them are listening. I know many of you send monies home. And that's a saving grace to our people. You send monies to pay light bills. You send monies to pay telephone. You send barrels. You send monies. And that is part of the reason. I don't know the statistics. Maybe Claudius knows it. And even so, I think the statistics is maybe not accurate. It's maybe underestimating the amount of remittances or the amount of gifts that our relatives that are sent home as reflected in the balance of payments. I haven't looked at it lately, but I believe this is a significant contribution to Dominica.
It's about 51%, Kent, from the last time I checked. It's about 51% in remittances.
Boy, wow. So that's a significant contribution. So thank you all the diaspora people for your support. If it wasn't for you, the country would have already gone to the dogs. I could tell you that. The other thing, of course, has been the CBI in itself, the illicit monies that they were able to get. I think prop the economy. Now that I believe CBI resources are not flowing as they ought to, maybe because of challenges with the banking system. But part of what they were able to do, because we have lost Ross, because we had no strong tourism, no strong basis for taxes, the use of the CBI monies to do some construction, housing here and there, little thing helped. And I think the third area, and it's a big area, that has popped up our economy is the underground economy. I believe there's so much illicit activity going there. Some of it sponsored and involved in by people in high places, including, let me say that, people in high places, let me not get too specific, but people in high places are involved in an illicit drug trade. Dominica is a major transshipment point for drugs. And somehow there is money in the system because of that. Maybe that kind of money is being accessed for political activity as well. I don't know. That's a reasonable assumption to make, because I don't know how, as a government, all of this illicit activity can be going on with your police not able to do anything about it significantly. You have to wonder whether they're aiding and abetting the process. I don't know. I have to wonder. Right? But I am telling you, that is maybe one of the major areas. So thanks to our diaspora, that's a good source, but it clearly shows the country is weak. The CBI is a failing source and a clear reflection that the government has no other option, not option, but they had no other means And then there's the illegal economy. It's a matter of time it's going to fall. I do not want it to fall, but it's a matter of time. Now, will it be safe? Can we avoid it? And these are the three things. The government either have to change their ways. Of course, you will always have institutions like the World Bank, that like the IMF, whose duty it is to come in and help at times when your country is under stress. So we are thankful to the World Bank for the assistance that they have been given. And of course, as you rightly said, there seemed to be an uptick in agriculture because of the subsidies, and that's exactly what they are. They are subsidies. Now, I don't know, I have not read the program myself. I don't know if you have read it, Claudius, but I would want to think an institution like the World Bank would be fully aware that it cannot just be inputs. There must be a marketing element and a shipping element. I don't know if they have incorporated that element into their strategy. But
Well,
the subsidies will result in some increase. But what you know what farmers are telling me?
Yeah.
But you want me to produce, they want me to produce, but where's the market? Unless you address the marketing component, it's not going to be sustainable. You'll have a temporary bump. Of course, it's good for food security for now. You'll have a temporary bump in production, but it'll, as Claudia said, it will go right back. Because unless you address in a strong way the marketing end, it's going to go right. So the World Banks will continue to help, and the IMF will continue to help, but the situation could fall apart. I hope not. I hope it doesn't. I hope before that happens, they're able, and I suspect they're doing that. I just don't have the information yet. They are maybe bringing back a little bit just to keep things flowing, but they need to bring back all of it. All of the $3.2 billion. But the economy could crash except if they do that. Now, I believe these guys are smart enough for them not, for the economy not to fall. They may find some way to bring back some of those monies to just to cause the economy to limp along. So they must do the right thing, which I doubt, but we as a people must be prepared to vote them out, to do what is morally right, to retake our government, to bring our country back to a place where it can be. But thirdly, as I said, that is where I am. I am at this stage where now I want to talk to many people. Those who want to make a difference in spite of this government. We're going to save our country in spite of the government. I don't want it to crumble. I hope it can survive. But I am going to contribute to that. But in the process, we have to be political in the sense that we have to let the people know that we are doing what the government was supposed to be doing. That must be very clear. When I say political, I don't mean partisan. I mean, we have to be very clear to the people that there are those of us who are going to do what it takes to organize farmers, do what it takes. And if the government follows and try to do that too, then good for the country. Just do it well. But we're going to have to organize farmers. We're going to have to work with businesses. We're going to have to work with investors. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard, but I'm preparing myself for that. I want to work with people like you, Joshua, and with Claudius, and with people like Thompson Fountain, and all those in the diaspora, those of you who are listening, those in Dominica, those I've already been speaking to. I cannot call all the names. I just call the names that I already everybody know. But we are going to be working, and it's not political in the sense of partisan. It is about saving this country. We're going to try real hard. Otherwise, our people are going to suffer.
Yeah, and Josh, just to add to what Kent alluded to, and he did point out some of the areas why the fiscal element of the economy is still being propped up, but there are also elements that prop it up, which we look at the cultural and social element. In Dominica, we have a culture that, hey, people can eat even if they don't have any food, right? The culture of, hey, you can go to the sea, catch a fish, you can go to the river, catch a crab, you can pass by a neighbor and pull a dash in and everything will be fine. Or you can go to your granny and spend the day and you get lunch, breakfast, and supper, and the next day you go to your auntie. These cultural elements has a way of kind of cushioning, the real, economic impact on the society as a whole. I believe, and I support Kent in that some of the CBI money are trickling in to keep up some of the fiscal measures and so on. But again, we have found ourselves here because, as everything, if we're going to build a house, one of the first things we do is secure the land, and the next thing we do is to get a plan, a blueprint, and then we get the best constructor, efficient constructor, right machinery to build the housing. The CBI program has been run under this administration without really a proper plan, right? You see, is a Kim Spring CBI here, is a hotel over there, Lai River. It's like these guys have that blueprint to just kind of pass the money through the laundry, and you know, the true impact is not there. There's no plan where this funds come into a central location with a clear plan and implementation strategy and outcome and robust, you know, evaluation monitoring of programs that will contribute to the economy and the sustainability of the economy. And sadly, I mean, like Ken say, we don't wish that. But if the CBI should come to a halt now, then I mean, we are no fini bato Dominic to call it in patois, because there is nothing that we can turn to if the CBI is gone, because all the billions that has been coming through the CBI has not been implanted or sown into the sectors of the economy that would sustain the economy. And I really do understand the Dominican mindset as yet, that these guys have been able to survive politically with those actions. And that brings me to the point, Ken, again, the technocratic branch of government, if that is a term in Dominica, is patriotic to the Dominican Labour Party. So they are sheltering and camouflaging a lot of the fiscal difficulties that the country is having. They are finding ways to deceive the people from the true reality of our fiscal position, and that may be one of the reasons why, you know, we cannot conclusively say that the economy has already crashed.
Well, guys, we may say that the economy may not have crashed. It's probably crashing. As Ken said, let us hope it does not crash. But what we know is that as we speak, things are very hard in Dominica. You hear it on the streets. You hear from the bus drivers, from the farmers, from public workers, from entrepreneurs, small business owners, even professionals, my colleagues. They have seen a drop in revenue. It's a reality in Dominica. And both of you have pointed out, if not CBI, then what? Now, this is a famous statement of the Prime Minister, but he made this statement in context of revenue generation for Dominica, not thinking of the ramifications. But he can get away, and he continues to get away with such shallow statements because, unfortunately, we have not had an electorate which thinks very deep in respect to where this government has taken the country. We have the problem of immediate gratification. A man supports a politician based on what he gets, not thinking of tomorrow. A lot of us who have been in receipt of houses or apartments from this government, we say that we are grateful. And we have to be grateful, but what we do not realize, as Ken pointed out earlier, we would have had more pride had we had a country where we could work to build our own houses. And that's how it was. In the 80s, when Banana was king, people built their homes. People built their houses. And you would think that an economy which is supposed to have grown, where we had 10, 15, 20% of the country being able to build cash, right now it should be 40, 50. But we have had a reverse. This country has gone backwards in some areas. So we have seen some improvements, but in terms of economic independence, individual growth and development, we have not really progressed significantly. And talking about housing, all these apartments which have been given to the people of Dominica, to date, titles have not been given to them. And that's another issue. And what's going to happen, probably a year before the next general election, this government is going to parade throughout the island talking about giving titles. But we are watching. But guys, we are coming to an end with the program, or the program is coming to an end. But before we end it, and we're going to continue, one or two persons have already asked for us to continue the program on the economic welfare of Dominica. Unfortunately, early on, we had some audio challenges that seem to have been cured. Just when the conversation has picked up, we have to leave, but we'll be back. But I want us to pay attention to some of the comments in the thread. Well, of course, Teresa Susanna Rule, good evening. I hope all is well. She said, well said. What she said there, Claddy. And then we have Kirsten Schillingford. He says, after 42 years of independence, can we really say that we are an independent country? What we have really done in the right way to move our country forward so the next generation can have a better future. Well, I don't know how you guys will take that, but it appears that Kirsten is questioning whether Dominica has really progressed since we gained independence. Have we really gotten independence? And Bruno, the question is, how are they going to turn or to burn into Dominica when the money is not in the name of the government, it is in the man's name? I think Earl is concerned about monies from the CBI program, which allegedly are sitting out there, and the government has some difficulties bringing that money in. Of course, there have been a big question about allocation. Well, not even just allocation. Before we get into allocation of the resources from the CBI, we have had a question as to whether the CBI program has been used as a channel for corruption, because monies which are supposed to go into the consolidated funds have been placed under the exclusive control of Anthony Hayden. And the big question continues to hover over Dominica as to whether that is illegal or illegal, a question which will be answered in court in the very near future. But for the benefit of our followers, if you have any question, go ahead and make it, because we're going to wrap up. Mali Ostri said good night. Earl is firing with more concerns. He says, how can we leave a country whereby all our good men is not in government? Well, Kent call on every Dominican, including you, Earl, to come together. Let us make it happen. You know, let's put the best minds, the best spirits, the best resources together so that we can make Dominica a better place. Okay, guys, we're going to wrap this up. We'll be back next Sunday. Same guests, Claudia Sanford and Kent. Once guys are available, we'll be back. Hopefully our audio will be perfect and our listeners will have no difficulties in hearing us. So, you know, the big question tonight was, or is, whether Dominica's economy is on the verge of collapse. And that question has been asked in light of the reality in Dominica. People are struggling financially. You know, I just want to wrap up, guys, before you all give your comments. You know, I listen to Dominicans, and you hear people say, I have been working for the past 30 years, and I don't have $10,000 saved in the bank. I mean, think of it. You are 55, you're almost 60 years old. You have been working for the past 40 years. Your mortgage is still unpaid, and you do not have $10,000 cash in the bank. Think of it, guys. Think of it. And there are people in their 20s and their 30s, same struggle. A lot of Dominicans, for those who are working, is just from hands to mouth. They are amongst the working poor. It's not just the unemployed who pander and clamor at the feet of politicians, but working people. And in some situations, people have to compromise themselves. They have to give up their integrity to survive. It is about who know who. This country has gotten to a point where men who were once proud are now on their knees chasing politicians for favors. The pride has gone when we were able to send our children to university without chasing a politician. We were able to send our children to school without chasing a politician. Now, that is not the case. And with this COVID situation, it has gotten worse. And until and unless we get an answer to our economic situation in Dominica, we may have to pay a very heavy price in the near future. God forbid the CBI program collapses, because if it does, then Dominica will be made naked and will appreciate the depth of economic problem that we have. Guys, you'll have the floor.
All right.
Okay,
Just,
well, Claudius, you want to go ahead or you want me to go?
okay, go ahead. I had problems putting on my mic. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I did too. But let me just end with an appeal to my fellow Dominicans, especially those in the diaspora. Everywhere, Dominicans everywhere, but especially those in the diaspora. I want to say to you that you are already doing quite a bit to help your own people in Dominica. And as I said earlier on, if it wasn't for some of you giving and sending monies home, we would have been in a much greater predicament than we are right now. So I want to thank you for that, first of all. But I want to say to you that you are an important instrument, you're an important part of the solution going forward. Part of what this guy uses to keep our people back is economic suppression. Some of you are in a position where you cannot be touched, your job cannot be touched. You're Dominican, but they cannot reach you over there, so to speak. We have to take back the reins of the economy in terms of the economy, in terms of money, in terms of business. We cannot surrender that. We have to take the fight there. And let me tell you, what I want to challenge you to is to put your effort there as well. Now, I cannot just tell you to put your effort there. What we have to do is work with a few other people and put the instruments and the arrangements in place, the institutions in place to help do that. What am I talking about specifically? Let me give you an example. And there's one particular guy, I will be looking to see if I can attract foreign investors. But I think part of it has to be with what we as our people are willing to do. And I'm going to be seeking investment. But let's take an example. There's a guy I'm speaking to and he wants to, and I'm going to say it out loud because I don't care if the government does it. If they do it, it's a good thing. I wish they will do it, as a matter of fact. The government has promised a boat, and it's never coming. Of course, you have to do the research, you have to do the analysis, you have to do the feasibility. But he wants to do it, and I'm going to do everything I can to support him and to work with him and to see if he can get in the investments. But you know, one of the potential sources of investments, if we could do this project and write the project out, and we could convince you enough that this could be viable, I would want to say to some of you, be in a position where you're prepared to, if 100 of us, if let's say 1,000 of us invest $1,000, how much is that, Claudius? You're the economist. That's $1 million, right? For a little bit of money, right? 1,000 is $1 million.
Yeah.
That possibly can give us a boat. Yeah. I'm saying to you, chances are we'll be coming to you with some proposals. Of course, you have to be wise and analyze the proposal and determine whether or not it makes sense. I am not expecting anybody to invest in anything that doesn't make sense. But I think part of what we have got to do is take the reins of the economy back from these guys. In fact, the economy is not going. They're keeping it suppressed. We are going to fight back by moving our country forward despite these guys. And one of the ways I believe you can help is be prepared to get involved in investing in the country. And we'll be organizing the investments. I'll be talking to that particular guy and others. And we will make an appeal to you. We'll register a company and we'll ask you to invest. Not necessarily in that one, but I'm saying things like that is part of my thinking. I want to involve you in taking back our country. If you see we take back economic power, then we take back our country as well.
Very well. Yeah.
Agree, Kent. Totally agree. Let me again just thank you, Josh, as we close, for the opportunity to be here tonight. It's been a while since I've been out of the the public space somewhat. But I've been in there, in spirit, and my wife, taking the front charge is always good, But it was nice tonight sharing, and to our listeners who stayed through, thanks for being there. I look forward to the next episode, Josh. I think your program is generating some very good discussions, and I encourage you to continue it whenever you feel like and come in and contribute. I'm here to do that. But I agree with Kent, and I also would like to join him in thanking the contribution the diaspora make in helping many of our brothers and sisters in Dominica to make ends meet and keep afloat in these hard economic times. We know it's not easy for them themselves in these countries under these pandemic conditions, but they do make the sacrifice, and we are grateful for that, and we want you to continue doing that. But as Ken said, we want you to look beyond just having the subsistence sent to the country, but being more involved in the empowerment of the economic sectors, and also get more involved in the direction that the country goes, instead of the normal political talk shows and so on, but get involved in really and truly molding and changing minds and framing of mindsets in the country. Because many of these individuals in Dominica who haven't taken the urgency of the economic situation in Dominica to heart and mind may need that little jolt from people on the outside, who knows the real struggle and see how, the more advanced economies, frame policy, formulate policy, implement policies, and how they have been able to achieve, some of what we call the first world countries and a better standard of living. And your involvement from the diaspora has to be deeper than just, sending back these remittances. So I totally agree with Kent on that. And to our people here in Dominica, while we analyze and we speak of the reality on the economic scenario in Dominica, I don't think we by no means, sharing, doom and gloom, about the country. I think we need to understand the reality so we too can look within ourselves and find the energy and discover and reignite the talents and the creativity and the innovation in ourselves to empower ourselves as individuals and also our families and our communities. And in that way, we too can shine light on some of the ills of governance in Dominica, and then we can, gradually in that way take back, the economic prowess of our country and make our country what we really want it to be. And then I believe if we all do that in whatever way we can, taking on the many challenges that we have to face, like the discrimination, the intimidation, we have to re-energize and take on this fight. Because if we don't, we are actually, laying the ground for the eventual collapse, which we spoke about earlier. So it's not a matter of, having you to be demoted and feeling all, bad about what is going on, but try to take it in the positive sense that, hey, as an element, as an energy, we can unite, we can come together, reignite our energy, reignite our vision, reignite our creativity, and take back, slowly that process of regaining our control of our country. So with that, Joss, I as I said, it was nice being here tonight. I look forward to the next episode. And Ken, thanks for being here, man. I feel good in your company. It's always a pleasure.
Well, guys, I am so grateful. I want to thank you for taking that time off to interact with the people of Dominica. And I also want to thank those who joined us this evening. Of course, we have been here for over 2 hours. Indeed, that's a marathon. And I know both of you are busy and you could have been doing something, but you're committed and dedicated towards the development of Dominica. You have been making sacrifices. That's not new to you. And this evening was just another sacrifice to add to the intellectual capital of this country. And I hope we were able to touch a few hearts and minds this evening and get people to understand that Dominica can be a better place. We are grateful. We're not preaching doom and gloom. We acknowledge the economic challenges in the region and in the world, but we have simply pointed out the areas where this government could have done better and can do better to make lives better in this country. Because it's really not nice to know that you're in your 30s and 40s and you do not have financial security. You don't have a savings. You have to depend on somebody for house repair in case you need your home to be repaired. You can't send your children to study on your own. What we want is a Dominica where poverty is eradicated, not just lessened, but everyone should have the dignity of a basic quality of life, the ability to buy and consume, the ability to be sheltered properly, the ability to have economic power. And that's what Kent is about. This is what Claudius is about. This is what Joshua Francis is about. This is not about us. This is about you. This is about all of us. And each and every one must play a part in making Dominica a better place. We do not have to wait for the next 5-year election cycle. It is a process. It is a journey. And we are on a journey to liberate Dominica. Because right now, Dominica is not in a very good place. We have leaders who are more concerned about themselves than the barefoot people in this country. It is just deception which is taking place. A few men who parade themselves as caretakers of the country, but at the end of the day, they are more concerned about themselves and their friends. It is obvious. we can see it. Dominica's sovereignty is being given away. Our projects are being given to foreigners, work which can be done by locals. Our citizenships are being sold for next to nothing. We have the cheapest citizenship in the world right now. And a lot of us are not thinking of the consequences, but this is a very serious issue. Our farmers continue to struggle. We are in a country where we're not training enough people in skills areas. Our graduates are not returning, therefore we are suffering brain drain. We're not seeing an increase in salaries. We're not seeing an improvement in job opportunities. Underemployment continues to grow. Entrepreneurs continue to suffer. The private sector is stagnant. The government continues to be the main economic driver. That spells trouble, as you heard from Claudia Sanford. Guys, we are going to continue to contend for Dominica. So once again, I just want to thank you for taking the time off, and I want to thank all our followers. And I want to take the opportunity on this platform to invite you to be back here on Sunday. We will make sure that our audio is better, and we'll continue to discuss the economy. Of course, this is a very vast area. We have not even touched and focused on one sector. So hopefully next Sunday, we'll be back and we could focus on one of the areas which is of vital importance. We already touched the CBI as far as something that is very, very critical. So I will leave it up to both of you for next Sunday. But let me just tell our followers that we'll be back next Sunday. Let me wish you all the best for this week. Whatever you're going through, I hope all the best for you guys. I hope you have a wonderful week. Let us continue to struggle. Let us continue the journey. Let us make it happen. Let us get Dominica. Let's contribute towards a better Dominica as we have been doing. Let's continue to contribute towards a better Dominica. So once again, thank you. Thanks for joining us right here on Contending for Dominica. God bless you guys. God bless our listeners.
Thanks, Josh. All the best. Good night.
All the best. Good night.
depuis soleil couché, moi qu'à espérer. Dis-moi, nous qui fait bon Dieu, puis moi qu'à dire, moi qu'à savoir ça, aïe aïe aïe, on va pas côté ça, moi qu'à dire, c'est l'idée, moi pour péter corps, assomme son là. Timono la usati, Timono la usati, Timono la usati, depuis soleil couché, moi qu'à espérer. Timono la usati, Timono la usati, Timono la usati, depuis soleil couché, moi qu'à espérer. Timono la usati, Timono la usati, Timono la usati, depuis soleil couché, moi qu'à espérer. Timono la usati, Timono la usati, Timono.
Pontin Baweyo, boy, Pontin Baweyo. Therefore, let me take away police to a balakoyo, boy, Pontin Baweyo,
Boy, Pontin Baweyo, boy, Pontin Baweyo.
Therefore, let me take away police to a balakoyo,
Boy, Pontin Baweyo.
Pontin Baweyo,
Boy, Pontin Baweyo. Therefore, let me take away police to a balakoyo, boy, Pontin Baweyo, boy, Pontin Baweyo, boy, Pontin Baweyo. Therefore, let me take away police to a balakoyo, boy, Pontin Baweyo. Pour qui ça, maman, pour qui ça? Dis-moi, pour qui on a monté la joie? Pour qui ça, maman, pour qui ça? Comment se fait qu'il faut moi bien? Pour qui ça, maman, pour qui ça? Dis-moi, pour qui on a monté la joie? Pour qui ça, maman, pour qui ça? Comment se fait qu'il faut moi bien? Pour qui ça, maman, pour qui ça? Dis-moi, pour qui on a monté la joie? Pour qui ça, maman, pour qui ça? Comment se fait qu'il faut moi bien? Pour qui ça, maman, pour qui ça? Dis-moi, pour qui on a monté la joie? Pour qui ça, maman, pour qui ça? Comment se fait qu'il faut moi bien? Bye, 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 abolo, ba qui est non moi. Si qui est non moi, tu connais ça, pas qu'elle m'a ouais moi. Boy, 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 abolo, ba qui est non moi. Si qui est non moi, tu connais ça, pas qu'elle m'a ouais moi. Bye, 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 abolo, ba qui est non moi. Si qui est non moi, tu connais ça, pas qu'elle m'a ouais moi. Boy, 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 abolo, ba qui est non moi. Si qui est non moi, tu connais ça, pas qu'elle m'a ouais moi. Mes amis, oh, mes amis, oh, mes amis, oh, on va faire ma fête côté là. Mes amis, oh, mes amis, oh, mes amis, oh, on va faire ma fête côté là. Mes amis, oh, mes amis, oh, mes amis, oh,
Monsieur quick. Copella baby copetic, you take a passe. Copella pegade ale qui ye copetic. Yo we, mon caille ciel. Yo we, mon caille ciel. Antida kaisala, ka weste dispole. You need to calti marcher la toute sorte bagay you mole. La penny yon keshoy. Fait qu'elle la descend, you want ready dining, Keisha, you may not be mais c'est quick. Copella baby copetic, you did a kaila. Copella baby pan biscuit, quitte les manger, il fait me, boy at the time. Copetic place a clean. Il est allé, les copains la pédit non et on porte à panla. Copéti quitte là, elle est volée, oui, mais yon dit ini que j'oie en caille, yon commence à